Hey folks, I'm live in San Diego here on Wednesday, July 22nd at about 5:30 p.m. And I'm going to be talking about the month of August 2020. We have some big shifts ahead, as we always do, especially in the middle of the month. There's going to be a big fiery shift of energy into the fiery signs. Mars and the Sun. At the beginning of the month here, we have a shift from Venus into Gemini, Mercury into Cancer. So quite a lot happening in August. It's going to be a big, as I say, shift, but a change, especially the shifting of Venus, who has been in Taurus since April. Okay, that is a major movement and time to advance in certain ways. And so we really have a lot ahead of us. So let me just pull up the chart here. And do I have it? Wait a second. Where did it go? Okay, let me pull this up. And there it is. Okay, so as we see the chart here for August 1st, we can see that as we start the month, Venus has just gone into Gemini. So you see here on July 31st, Venus is in Taurus. This is around the middle of the day here in Pacific. Let me actually move the time back a little bit, a few hours back. So, all right. So, and on the August 1st, you can see Venus goes into Gemini that day. August 2nd, Mercury moves into Cancer. So, of course, obviously, this is based on the sidereal zodiac and the Lahiri Ayanamsha, which is the zodiac of India, of course, in all the texts. Ashwini and Aries at the beginning, and then everything follows from there. Everything pinned to that sidereal sky. And so, August 1st, Venus moves from Taurus, where it has been since early April. Now, again, this has showed a relative stability, patience, allowing things to kind of work out, wanting to hold things together. That has been going on since early April. Now, again, Venus is also the planet of relationship, of cooperation. And again, in the sign of Taurus, it's shown that we've had a real tendency to try to act that way in the midst of all kinds of things that have been happening that maybe, try our patience and that, undermine our connections with each other. We've been trying to be patient with each other since April or so, if you can believe that, right? That's going to change. Venus going into Gemini. Now, Gemini is not a aggressive sign. It's not like it's moving into, Aries or Leo or something. It will be later, especially when it goes through Leo, we'll have some things come up. But Venus is going into Gemini, which is also a sign of communication, cooperation, wanting to hear the other person's point of view. One of the things about when Venus was in Taurus is, Venus in Taurus can have a tendency toward being stuck and being, stubborn a little bit, at least around those Venus areas of life. Now, again, it's actually a conducive energy because Venus areas of life should be something that we move slowly on. We're supposed to move slowly with our relationships, with the people that we are trying to get along with and all of that. But there can be a kind of intractability as well at times with any planets in Taurus. So perhaps we've been going back and forth in some kind of relationship area and trying to cooperate and trying to hold it together, which is Venus in Taurus. Now Venus moves into Gemini. Our motivation is less about the trying to hold it together and more about the communication and the movement when Venus goes into Gemini at the very beginning of August. Now, one of the things we really need to watch out for is Venus is joined Rahu, the North Node. So as we see, especially again, the beginning of August, this is August 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. Again, Venus from August 1st until about the 6th or 7th is going to be right on the, right on the North Node, right where the eclipse just happened. So there could be a lot of unusual, crazy communications with partners and with others around that time. You have to be careful of that, of kind of volatile communications and explosions and things like that in early August, especially with Venus moving into Gemini and then hitting the North Node, which tends to conflate things, make things big, kind of blow them up a little bit. But it really has a positive possibility, again, because Venus is in Gemini, which is a friendly sign. It's a sign of communication. And many times relationships, obviously, they need that sort of communication. You have to remember to be listening as well. And a big part of the Gemini skill is to really listen and to clarify and to not get angry and frustrated and fired up because there's a lack of communication, to not project a lot of opinions that we already have. Again, these are the kinds of things that really undermine good communication, where we're really just communicating because we want to tell the other person what they did to us. And we don't listen to them. We're not really listening. We're not really communicating. We're just venting or attacking or, accusing, and then we're not really listening. So again, early August, there's a great possibility, actually all of August for sure, because Venus is in Gemini pretty much the whole month. But certainly at the beginning, there's going to be a shift, and it could be a volatile one where there could be a real kind of things, if not blowing up through anger, then just a lot of miscommunication. But slow down and listen as much as talk, and especially take a deep breath around, let's say, things that have been miscommunicated, especially as it relates to frustration and anger and things that maybe have built up. Again, Venus and Taurus can tend to just say, okay, I want to keep things together, maybe at the expense of processing things. So resentments could have built up. So we can see that, we should see some of that in early August with Venus going into Taurus and close to Rahu. Again, at the very beginning of August as well, we see Mercury is in Cancer. He goes in there on August 2nd. So Mercury in Cancer. Again, Cancer now is also, it's the sign of, it's ruled by the moon, and it's related to feeling, emotion, deeper, connection to the heart that's much deeper than just our emotional mind. And that connection to the heart, that deeper connection, is relative to Mercury areas of life. It's a little confusing because, again, Mercury is about our skill and precision and being able to think through things with nuance. And Cancer is about emotion, and it's more watery. And so we might feel some confusion around those things, and your communications might be a little strained. So in that, what I just described, which is Venus going into Gemini, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and the ruler Mercury is going to be a little confused and a little emotional. So really be aware of this stuff at the beginning of August. We could definitely see some, there's going to be a shift. Venus leaving Taurus is a big shift. It's been there for 4 months. So think of, in the midst of all the stuff that's been going on, that's been most of the COVID thing. Early April, the world just really was just starting to hunker down for the beginning of the COVID stuff and all the social distancing. That's when Venus entered Taurus, way back then. So again, anytime you get a big shift like this whole quality of Venus and how, let's say, how patient we've been, how much we've been able to endure those kinds of things and find commonality and find structure, that's shifting. It's going into Gemini, where now we want to start talking about things. And Mercury, who is the ruler of Gemini, is going to be in Cancer, which is more emotional and less precise, less able to be triggered, actually, or I should say more able to be triggered emotionally, less lighthearted. So again, especially from August 1st until about the 6th or 7th, as Venus is going over Rahu, again, where we just had the eclipse, that eclipse point is very sensitive. You want to be careful. But the benefit of Mercury in Cancer can be quite creative. It's intuitive. And, again, if you're someone who is like a creative person, or someone who is, especially connected to things like music and writing and creativity and expressing yourself emotionally through any kind of, art, again, art, music, even writing or whatnot, water signs are very much about the imagination and unlocking the imagination. When people have Mercury in water signs, many times they can be good writers, if other things, show that. But at the very least, they can have a very powerful imagination. So again, it can be quite beneficial for those things. What we have to be careful of, though, with Mercury is usually not the part of us that wants to be benefiting from our imagination. Because again, Mercury is where we're trying to speak accurately and correctly. Like here I am doing an astrology update. What if instead of me talking about all the specific details of the chart, which is a good Mercury, I'm showing them, the date and the moment and all those details. What if instead I was just like riffing on my imagination, what I imagine anything might be, and I'm not even looking at the chart, or I'm not even looking at anything. I'm saying, oh, I just have this feeling everything's going to be this way. I mean, you might enjoy it and it might even be right, but it's not very good communication because I'm not really showing you what it is I'm talking about, and it might be confusing. So again, when Mercury is powerful and when we have good communication, it's because we're saying things that a person can follow. We're also listening to what, and things are following, and the details are making sense. So it makes sense to us what's being said. Now, again, in the other way of looking at it, Mercury enjoys, like when Mercury's in water signs, he can find that that the quality of making sense through words and literal language on the earth is not really the easiest thing. So Mercury in water signs can tend to be in a more creative, ephemeral space. So personally, I'm looking forward to that. I've just built up my music studio a little bit here, and I've been actually getting more into that. So I'm looking forward to doing some creative, some creative music in the next couple months. I've been really having the bug, and so it's good for that. It's good for going into that realm of the imagination, which isn't necessarily escapism. Many times it's escaping into something that's less linear and regimented and more, again, more etheric and more transpersonal, more cosmic. So that could be a great benefit. And as you see, we have, again, I'm just going to run these transits through. You see Mercury going through Cancer, gets very close to the sun here as it gets around the end. This is called Cazimi in Western astrology, or combust. This is Mercury that's combust on the other side of the sun. So as we get around the middle of August, we're going to start to see a shift into some kind of fiery and even frustrated energies. In particular, again, as we get the sun getting closer to Leo, Mercury gets really combust. This is August 14th. Mars is about to go from Pisces into Aries. So all of this fire is about to shift. We're about to get a big fiery shift in the middle of August. Because again, we also start off with the sun in Cancer. And again, Sun and Mercury both in Cancer. Both of them are affirming that creative, especially like music or writing or even painting or whatever it might be. Sun and Mercury are both supporting that as they go through Cancer, and things that allow you to really connect to the heart and go deeper than just the emotions. That's really what Cancer is about, especially going deeper than just the surface emotions where we're just feeling kind of triggered and feeling kind of, sort of knocked around by the moment and our momentary frustrations and fears and whatnot. So, but as we get to around the middle of August, you see the sun in Aslesha Nakshatra here. This is on the 15th. Now it's going to pass through the Gandanta point, which is that point where Cancer ends and Leo begins, and there's no nakshatra to bridge the two. That's called Gandanta, and it's a difficult sort of juncture where it's like a hard stop, and the momentum of the zodiac sort of hits a brick wall, and then we got to jump over the wall to get into the next area of life. And we also have Mars at the Sandhi point, at another Gandanta point, actually. We also have Mars crossing over from Pisces into Aries in his Gandanta point, also on August 15th. So literally like August 14th and 15th and 16th, so August 14th, 15th, and 16th, you would say there could be some very unpredictable, volatile energy. We're also getting near a new moon here, but especially those days, August 14th, 15th, 16th, as the sun is changing signs, Mercury is also combust, and Mars is also changing signs, both of them passing through the Gandanta point, passing from the water sign to the fire sign at the same time. Again, a big shift from water into fire. Those days could be volatile, transitional. Look for some things. We often see things play out publicly. Again, this could have something to do with things like law and law enforcement and other things that are happening. We saw globally, a couple months ago with protests and whatnot. We've seen in the U.S. for sure an escalation in law enforcement and other things that have been coming to a head, and other social distresses and unrest that could be that could get unleashed in the middle of August. There are a couple issues that are just really burning right now in the U.S., especially because our country hasn't handled this coronavirus pandemic well at all. Every other country did, but we have not, for various reasons: impatience, lack of good leadership, things like masks and social distancing turned into political issues rather than health issues like they've been in the rest of the world. And we see more and more conflated stress. And the middle of August, especially, we could see some sort of volatile events happen in the middle of August for sure that lead to some, real frustrations getting exacerbated through the rest of the month, especially as the sun goes through Leo, because now we're going to have the sun in Leo, Mercury in Leo, Leo as well, in Magha, and Mars is now in Aries. So, and Mars will be in Aries for a while. He's going to go retrograde here. I don't think it's by the end. I think it's in September. The retrograde actually starts. Yeah. Okay. So, but we can see that this big shift again, especially by the 17th of August, let's say by the 17th, 18th, there's going to be a big shift, at least with the sun moving into Leo and Mars in Aries. So again, when the sun is in Leo, though, it shows, aside from things like, the government and whatnot, it also shows on an individual level, it really shows an empowerment of the individual, our individuality, that divine light within. And it's that light that is not just trying to behave and make people like us and all that stuff that we usually do. Most of the time, we're kind of phony, insincere, doing things to make people like us, personality driven. Again, we all want people to like us or whatever. It's not to be critical, but I mean, we're not living our full authentic self. That's like, this is who I am. And it doesn't mean doing that, living your full authentic self means that it has to include being phony, but often it does. And it's not intentionally phony, but it's just political, and we're not sure of who we are. So we make compromises, and we're trying to be nice and get along. And again, we have this behavior and this personality. And then underneath it all, there's this other thing going on. So again, that's just typical. But the sun is actually the part of you that is trying to live in full integrity. And again, integrity means your true self, your true behavior, not doing things just because you think people will like you, or afraid of your own power or whatever. I mean, think of how much of our nature is lived this way. Most of us are afraid of our own power, because as soon as we start to get a little bit of power, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean, let's say we start to dream bigger, like you start to dream and say, oh yeah, I'd really like to do this. And you start to, really start to embody that and start to, go for it and start to maybe invest in classes or doing things. And you start seeing yourself in that new way. You notice how all the people around you will start to, you can't do that. Be careful. People will try to keep you in that comfort zone, the comfort zone that they're comfortable with, by the way, not necessarily that you're comfortable with. And so much of our life is trying to outlive or trying to outgrow the little box that our family put us in, that our friends put us in, that we put ourselves in at any given moment in time. And you're in a box right now. So am I. We all are. It's not like it's finished at some point. Even if someone does become like successful, or they do live in accordance with their own integrity, it's never complete. It's never total. The sun is always burning off more and more levels of insincerity, and trying to connect with that authentic self, which is not just doing what they think they should be doing, or, living that authentic life through some kind of action, but also within, as it relates to things like having compassion, having love and joy and vulnerability, and other things that aren't always easy for people to live authentically. It's just living authentic. And so this transit of the sun through Leo from August 15, or let's say from August 16th until into September, into the middle of September, every year is a time to return to that light, to that authentic light within, to that part of you that is not just trying to trade your authenticity for acceptance or acceptability or whatever it might be. So it often makes us restless. The sun in Leo is a challenge. It's a challenge to really show up in full power around the whole spectrum. The full power doesn't necessarily mean the power to dominate others. It doesn't mean that your power comes at anyone else's expense. It means there's full power. There's also full compassion. There's full generosity. There's full clarity. And the compromises that you may come from a place of abundance, and all of those things that are often hard to even remember anymore because we've made so many concessions. So, and again, we see the overreaching of this and the abuse of this as well. When people don't know themselves very well, they abuse the power they have. because they don't know their true nature. So they're like, oh, I have this much power. Okay. And it's more than you. So I'll dominate you, but it's less than this person. So I'll cower in front of the boss, but then I'll dominate my employees. These kinds of things where there's no integrity. So August, especially the middle of August until the middle of September, is really a time of integrity. Think about what that term integrity really means. The way I understand it and the way I explain it and feel it is that you'll notice with someone who has integrity that in some ways they treat everyone the same. Now, it doesn't mean their behavior is they treat everyone the same, but they don't change, even if they're talking to a child or if they're talking to the president of the United States or whoever it is, their identity remains congruent. Now, they'll speak to the child differently, but they'll still bring the same presence and the same level of presence is a good word into all exchanges. They are not defined by who's in front of them, by how much power the people in front of them have, or that they have, or who's the winner, who's the top dog, who's this or that. All situations are flowing out of a person who is, you would say, comfortable in their own skin. And when you've been around people who are comfortable in their own skin, this is one of the things that you'll recognize. You might not recognize that's what it is, but that's one of the biggest things that it is, that they're modeling. And so I'm talking about this a lot because it's a big lesson that we all need to learn and that we all need to embody a little bit more. You'll see with great gurus and great spiritual teachers, they're always authentic and comfortable in their own skin. They're always, regardless of what comes up. And as such, they're always comfortable in every situation because they're not trying to make everything or everybody adapt to their personality. They just meet whatever is there with presence. So this is the sun, and the sun is only, and the king is only on the throne once a year. So starting from the middle of August to the middle of September, the king is on the throne. So again, one of the things that this will also be showing is governmental overreach or governmental power and people who abuse their power and who have a weak self-image, particularly the power structures that we're surrounded by now, because we live in a time where there's so much corruption in governments and institutions. We will see some abuse of power, I think, for sure. And we may have some big things that happen in governments around the world where you see people who are in power, especially if they are abusive of their power, will be abusive of their power. Those who have, dictatorial tendencies might use them, and there will be a backlash against it. So we might see some of that, some of the clashes, and that part of the power that many, dictator types have is the power over their people to get their people to do something and to create confusion and drama and all this stuff. So we could definitely see here in the US with all the social divisions we have around politics and whatnot, it's going to start a real a time of fiery rhetoric and probably some unrest. It is starting at least around the middle of August through the middle of September. We could definitely start to see some things ratchet up. At the very least, even things like what we're seeing right now, especially some of the issues in the news in the US, I'll just speak very quickly about, is things like going back to school. Again, we're having this great tension right now because the virus has been so badly mishandled, and at least the president has no clue what he's doing or saying. I want 100% people back to school, even if there's no plan how to do it. Most of the school districts are saying, we're not ready. We're not going to parents don't want to send their kids back to school. but maybe there will be some edict handed down where there could be some real frustration and tension around these things. Not to mention, again, now there are, Department of Homeland Security troops being sent into cities. That is really a violation of federal law, because they're there to enact federal laws, even though they're just detaining people without any identification, putting them in unmarked vans, taking them to locations. These things are going to be heading for a bad end. And people are not just going to say, okay, go ahead. Now we have, federal troops being sent into any city. This is going to not turn out very well. This is going to lead to a lot of tension. And so we should expect to see some real backlash against things that are happening. That's in the U.S. Other countries that have strong arm leaders, you think of somewhere like in Turkey, Erdogan, of course, Russia with Putin, in the Middle East, other places. So we could definitely see those kinds of things playing out. And again, Mercury is also combust during this time. Mercury is very combust, especially around the 20th. You could see, this whole time from the 17th, as he goes into Leo, 17th to about the 20th or so, 15th, 16th, 17th, or about the 20th, Mercury is also very combust. And it's, again, when Mercury is combust like this too, it can show the furious communication that's going on, or that's possible. Again, Mars in Aries also, we have the possibility of frustration, personal frustrations and battles and fights with each other and fighting with each other. We have to be careful, though. Again, the real power of Mars isn't necessarily the power to fight with each other. It's the power to be disciplined. That's the highest quality of Mars. The highest quality of Mars is not just fighting, it's being disciplined to transform that energy and that heat and that frustration of Mars into discipline. And again, what discipline means is this choice that we have to make. We have to make a choice in the moment between one thing or another thing. One second. Mars gives us the capacity to make that difficult choice based on what we know is right. And Mars is the part of us that wants to be right and that thinks we're right. No matter what it is that's going on in your life, you think you're right. You might be right, especially if it agrees with what I think. But we always think we're right in the moment. Whatever it is that you think is right, you think it's right, obviously. And it might sound simple and redundant, but it's actually huge, because if someone says something that you don't think is right, even if you don't know that much about it, the first thing that pops up is Mars can pop up and want to defend what you think is right. And these opinions will come out. Oh, look. And Mars operates through this stream of opinions in the mind to defend what we think is right. And if necessary, destroy and kill what we think is wrong. Again, this is why Mars is always, it's a destructive energy that wants to destroy the things we think are wrong. And it gives us the strength and the courage to do that, because we have to do that. And we do it in many ways. We do it when we make a choice to work out, for example. Because working out, let's say, getting and, sweating on a machine and, a Stairmaster or something, that's hard. That's not the first thing we would think of. Like, oh, that'll be fun. It's really not fun. But we do it because we know it's right. And that doing it's going to make us strong. It's going to make us healthy. And if we endure a little bit of difficulty and stress right now, it's going to be beneficial in the long run. So Mars gives us the capacity to suffer for our principles being what we know is right. I know it's right. It's going to make me stronger. So I'm willing to suffer a little bit in order to do what I know is right. We can see it physically that way. We can also see it, like willing to suffer a little bit by, for example, rather than eating the food that tastes the best and a whole lot of it and kind of indulging, which is Venus. By the way, Mars is always kind of against Venus. Venus says, let me sit on the couch a little more. Mars says, no, let's go up and get on the Stairmaster. So Venus and Mars always have this kind of conflict between what's going to make me happy right now and what do I know is right. So again, meals are a good example as well of Venus and Mars. Venus says, I want to eat 2 portions of the thing I love the most that tastes really good. Mars says, I want to eat the proper portion of the thing that I know that's going to make me the healthiest. It might not taste the best. I'll find a way to get through it and eat it, and it can taste good enough, but it's going to be the food that makes me strongest and gives me vitality. And I'm willing to suffer a little bit and not eat the most delicious food in order to put what I know is right in my body. So when Mars is powerful, we're willing to suffer for our principles a little bit. In the moment, again, it's not even that bad. Again, if you're willing to suffer a little bit now, you suffer a lot less later. If you're not willing to suffer a little bit now, you're going to suffer a lot more later. And that's called discipline. This is what discipline is the willingness to be able to suffer a little bit every time you eat a meal or every day. For example, we should get up a little early, do our meditation, maybe do some yoga, do some things that we all should do this. But that means that alarm clock goes off, and what do? You get your ass up out of that bed, and Venus wants to keep sleeping in the bed, but Venus wants to sleep a little longer, and Mars says, no, let's get up. And I'm willing to suffer a little bit for my principles, getting up out of the bed and making myself strong. So I'm talking about this a lot because that's really the power of Mars in Aries. When Mars is strong and powerful, he's willing to suffer for our principles. In this section of the zodiac, Mars is really strong because he's just in Pisces. In fact, he's in Pisces now as I record this he's obviously in Pisces until the middle of August. And so where he is now, I'm recording this on the 22nd of July. So right now he just went into Revati Nakshatra, right? So Mars in Pisces is actually kind of like the spiritual warrior. Mars is now trying to be very disciplined about our spiritual practices and about really connecting to things beyond this earth. But there could be a quality of like escapism in it and things that are sort of not as grounded and disciplined, not as disciplined because it's emotional. But it actually can be disciplined even now, because if we're aligned with our teachings and our gurus and our higher wisdom, which is Pisces, then Mars can be very disciplined now as well, especially for things like meditation. If you have a strong meditation practice, Mars can be quite disciplined now. But again, it's also the opportunity or the possibility that you could be sort of carried away by, Netflix or something. And if someone doesn't have a strong spiritual practice, Mars in Pisces can be sort of checked out. But when he goes into Aries, it's definitely a time to reestablish establish, even if you never have before, establish a strong spiritual disciplined life. And again, that includes mainly the things that I just talked about. Yoga keeps things very simple. And the reason yoga is so powerful is because it is, because it's, I'm sorry, I read a comment. It's why I don't always read the comments. The reason is because yoga keeps things very simple because there's only a few things that we need to do. Our life is actually, the things that are the most important are the simplest. We're only doing a few things. We're eating, sleeping. We're really animals. We complicate it a lot because we have this brain. But the spiritual path is really it's a very simple thing. If we can manage if we manage our food, if we manage our sleep, if we manage our physical, like exercise and movements, then that's all we need to do. And this is the great quality of Mars, actually, is to actually keep things simple and to put them into action and to perform actions that make us strong, not ideas. No one is going to get, in fact, hardly any stronger by arguing. Nobody ever became enlightened by arguing with somebody. Not even once. Arguing, especially, is just a depletion of energy. And so Mars setting up in Aries in the middle of August is going to be a great time to really channel the fire of frustration that you're going to see all around you, because you come out somewhere on the wearing masks or not wearing masks, and somewhere you come on that issue, and whichever the other side is, you're just frustrated and want to strangle them. But again, this is a great test for us all. It's a great test for me as well. I'll admit it, because I get frustrated, and I've just watched myself just be like, you know what? I can just go back to being a yogi on some level, that I care about all of these things, but at the same time, I also know I'm powerless to change someone else's mind. I can just put out what I think is right, have compassion for what other people want to do, and not get the frustration, the anger, the attachment, the whole kind of thing that just makes me weak, that makes us all weak. And even when we're in that triggered space, we're not, not only is our soul not expanding because we're collapsed around this attachment and frustration, but we're also missing the space that's between everything, which means between us all. Because underneath it all, like I've been saying it for months, especially around the controversies of our world and of our time now, we all want the same thing. We all want a world of joy and beauty where we can interact with each other. And because we're living in an age now where we're so attached to all this information and all these stories, and we're so certain that our story is right. And like I've said for months, right now, this eclipse cycle that we've just had, that we've been living with Rahu and Gemini, and now we just had eclipses. In many ways, it's here, I said from the very beginning, to just frustrate us, hopefully, with the idea that we got any of this figured out. Or that in some ways, anything that we get so fired up about and all these opinions that we're so certain of the way things are, ultimately, on some level, all of that is going to fail. And I'm talking about this on a deeply personal level. Culturally, we're going to work through this somehow. It's going to work itself out. But I mean individually. I'm talking about as individual souls. What we're collectively able to see right now, or hopefully we can see, is that underneath it all, we're all in it together, quote, so to speak. But even whether you're anti-mask or pro-mask or this politician or that one, underneath it all, none of it is worth losing our soul over. Because the biggest problem, even on that level, is the systems that are in place. And the systems are changing. And everyone agrees to that. I haven't seen a single person who isn't thinking about these systems and these disagreements who don't agree with the idea that, well, underneath it all, the whole system itself is what's corrupt, and that's what needs to change, and that's what needs to get blown up. We all agree on that. And we all agree on the world we want to see. We just get hung up on the fighting about the specific details. And so what I think we need to do is, especially with this Mars going into Aries and the Sun in Leo, the heat is going to get turned up. It's going to get turned up. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't represent and have your views and fight for them in the way that's appropriate, so to speak. And fight the real enemy, fight the system and the things that are holding back progress. And yes, that can include some of the politicians and the people, but don't lose your soul in it. The yogis, for example, were great fighters. They weren't sitting up on a mountaintop somewhere saying, screw it, the world will take care of itself. No, they're down in it. And that's what yoga is. Yoga, for example, is a union. It's a union of all things, but part of it is also to be involved with it, but not involved with it. To be in the fight, but not having the fight on a personal level, not having it destroy your nervous system. I use my guru Amma as a great example all the time because she's as in it as anybody. I mean, Amma goes right in the middle of everything and sits there and surrounded by all of the chaos. Every calamity and catastrophe and flood and whatnot, she'll go right into those areas and sit with those people who've lost everything and be completely involved. But yet there's something about it, because she's established in the self, that's not defined or drained by it or not taken out of the supreme self, no matter how involved she is. And she's totally involved. She's totally immersed in it. But she's in the world, but not of the world. And that's the highest yoga. We're not really doing yoga, or we're not really learning anything if we're like a hothouse flower, right? Where we're safe and protected up in the Himalayas meditating. And by the way, even when you do that, all of the great gurus will also tell you don't do that, because you're going to take the world with you. It might seem like this great dream. One day I'll just get away from it all and go. You could do it now. Go do it. The reason you don't do it is because you're not in the world. The world is in you. You'll take the world with you to the Himalayas, or to the Himalayas. Again, this is what the great gurus always teach their disciples, because disciples are just dreaming. We're all just dreaming. We have this dream going on, and we're always dreaming of the thing we don't have. So we're in the world, and we're totally hypnotized. We're like, oh, it would be so great if I was with this guru in the Himalayas. Oh, that would be so great if I only had that. We're just dreaming of the thing we don't have, but you would take that with you. Then you'd be on the Himalayas and you'd be dreaming about Facebook and listening to me on YouTube. Well, hopefully it wouldn't be that. No, but we take the world with us. Like they say, we're not in the world is in us. They say, another good way to look at this is that even with all the possessions and all the things we have, it's not that I have this cup has me. Who is really possessing who? Or who is the possessor and who is the possessed? I have it, but it has me. So these are very interesting things to ponder now, especially with Mars and Pisces as I record this now, because this is very Piscean kind of mysticism. And Mars and Pisces, which is where Mars will be until August 14th. So between now and August 14th, still about 3 weeks, Mars is still in mystical Pisces. So bringing that mysticism and that courage to that part of you that's not of this world. You're not of this world. So nothing in the world has got you. This is the thing. You don't have anything. In the highest sense as well. You don't own anything, not even your body. You don't have it. It has you. All of your preconceptions, all of your attachments. It's not your body. Your body has you. Your possessions have you. Pisces is the sign of letting go, of literally surrender and trusting that you're not of this world, and having the courage, which is Mars, to allow that to happen. Because again, ultimately, Mars is the courage. And one of the most courageous things you'll ever do is surrender. It's the hardest thing. The hardest thing is surrender. This is why this is related to Pisces. The hardest thing is to just stop fighting. Stop defining yourself. You might say, well, I don't fight. You do fight. You're always fighting. Your ego is always fighting your higher self. Always. Never stops. In fact, you're so used to it, you don't even know that's what's happening. The ego is always trying to hold on. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. Always. So much so that we don't even know we're doing it. And that's where all of our life energy goes. You know, one of the reasons why these great Mahatmas have so much energy, physical energy even, is because the struggle isn't playing out all the time. This struggle, this soul struggle, this cosmic struggle that we are always doing, we don't even know we're doing it, isn't happening. There's nothing cutting off the flow. They're just tapped into the universal current. Their body needs to sleep, but they don't need a lot of sleep. And then when they wake up, they've recharged, and then they're not in this constant struggle where their ego is wrestling with their soul, which is what we're always doing. And I say ego, it's our mind. And the way we can understand it is that our mind is always like you're always thinking, and you're just going through all these emotions and these ideas, and this thing is constantly happening. This allocation of energy is always back and forth. And when I say, this is what I mean about not surrendering. It's just the typical nature of life through an ego is, well, I'm going to go do this. Now I have this feeling, and there's that thing, and this person, and this thing, and that. And it's just this constant energy just getting zapped. Always just depleting. When there's surrender, it's like there's just clarity, and there's none of that resistance. So between now and the middle of August, it's really a good time to ponder these ideas, this surrender and this letting go and this sort of dream state, Maya, and not collapsing further into the dream, but awakening from the dream. And Mars in Pisces can really help to awaken from the dream. And then when we get to the middle of August, Mars goes into Aries, and it's like a rebirth. Pisces to Aries is a rebirth. Pisces is like the womb and the in utero state. And Aries is like coming out into the world. In fact, the first nakshatra, Ashwini, is like you come into the world, but you come in through the birth canal, which is the second nakshatra of Bharani. So these are some ideas and some things to ponder for August 2020. I've seen there's been quite a lot of conversations going on. I've seen a few of them, and I'm glad people are having some conversations. You know, the last thing that I'll say, and it's an overall idea. When the coronavirus started and we started going into this, I talked about some of the things that I think were the real benefits and the real blessings. And for the most part, these things are coming true. We're seeing much more of a focus now, months later, you know, like 5 months later or so, 4 or 5 months later, on healthier food choices, non-meat eating, questioning these kinds of things. I had a feeling this would happen, even if it started to shift things a little bit. I've seen so much more now, even in mainstream media, in, you know, where if not vegetarian, but at least healthier eating, and how eating and our food choices and our lifestyle choices are so much more important than all of this other nonsense. My first thing, and the main thing that I started talking about for a long time at the beginning, and I want to get back to this, is this whole idea about the whole virus itself came because of our brutalization of animals, out of bats and other animals brought into these wet markets in these terrible conditions, and this horrible practice of slaughtering innocent animals. It's not nutritious, it's nothing. It's all about money and commerce, all of it. It has nothing to do with nutrition, nothing to do with health. It's all about money, 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 and money, and more money. And we keep acting like conspiracy theory, like everything is so complicated. Nothing is complicated. It's all money, everything. There's one conspiracy, and it's money. Everything that's conspiring against you is so that somebody is making money and trying to keep more for themselves and less for you. Everything, the whole thing is that industry for sure. And it's not just money from animals, but then it's money from the crops that it takes to raise the animals, Monsanto and all this. And then it's the oil that it takes to put in the cars and the trucks to take them around and to sell to us for our cars. And it's the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry that wants you to stay sick eating this terrible food. And it's this is the conspiracy in front of everybody that nobody pays any attention to. Instead, we got to look at something like QAnon and this and reptilians, and the conspiracy's right in front of you, and it's been there forever. And what I hope people wake up to a little bit, instead of, oh my God, we're going to get microchipped and all this stuff, is look at what's in front of you and start to shift some of that. We're very far away from those other things happening, but we're not far away from this other stuff that's been happening forever. And the benefit of the COVID and will help us get back a lot of our time. We're going to get out of this, but look at how much we've been able to accomplish and realize with home, like working from home, remote work, remote learning, to take back our time, to take back our freedom, instead of getting in these cars and driving everywhere all the time, to these jobs where we sit in a building and work on a computer next to other people. All of this wasted time, resources. When this thing first started, I said the biggest things were going to be, first of all, health, stop brutalizing animals, start looking at our footprint and how much time we were wasting. You're going to see that we would see very quickly how many jobs, especially all these tech jobs that could be done from home. And I said then, right when it started, we're never going back. We're never going back completely to what it was before. Absolutely, that's the case. All those tech companies are not going to go back to the way they were before. You could maybe have some meetings in person that you need to have. Other than that, we're not going back to it. This is a huge opportunity right now. A huge opportunity for things, for progress, especially in these two ways. A health renaissance, health. It's just started. It's going to continue, and hopefully we can do more. But the big issue should not be masks and washing your hands. It should be immune system. Again, the reason you don't have that is because you have a medical industry that doesn't want you to know that if you eat ginger and turmeric, you'll probably never get the damn thing, or you couldn't get it. And if you did Kapalabhati and pranayama and drank ginger, and some cayenne pepper with some food, you'd never get another virus. But you won't hear this. Again, instead, we're going crazy over these conspiracies. These are the messages we should be reinforcing and magnifying. These are the things we're not being told. We're not being told about the health industries and and the cabal of pharmaceuticals and this reliance on things like vaccines, we should be talking about these things, like, that we need to build up our immune system, that we have natural cures, that we need to stop eating this horrible food, this junk food, this food that's created from torture and hatred and domination of sentient animals. You think if people stopped eating that crap, we would still have as much of this virus? Most of the people that die from the virus are people who are either really old and or have these other comorbidities from decades of just eating horrible food with no awareness. These are the people that are dying from the virus. That message isn't put out, of course. That doesn't mean we can't learn it and know it and put it out there. So there's great progress ahead, but we have to be the voice for that. And so maybe in this month of August, when the planets are moving through, the sun going through Leo, Mars and Aries, we stand strong and bright and powerful with these powerful messages. And when we see people fighting about whether masks are against your First Amendment or whatever the thing is that fires us up or whatever, we can come back more strong with the real problem and what the real conspiracy is. So hopefully we can keep those things in mind as well. And I appreciate everyone coming today, and share this with others if it was helpful for you. And I hope you have a good August.